Yeah, there's a whole lot to discuss, several questions to ask, and a whole lot of makes you go, Coming up on this episode of The Village People, right here on TalkAboutMartin.com.
Welcome to the Village of Indiantown regular Village Council meeting this December 10th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m.
Okay, boys and girls, let's pull back the curtain and see what we can unearth and figure out from this last regular meeting of the IVC, the Indiantown Village Council, and the Village People. So stick with us. Here we go.
As Doug mentioned, yesterday we celebrated our first Planning and Zoning and Appeals Board. Congratulations to those committee members and Daniel Sahayat for becoming the chair. I look forward to working with all of them to move Indiantown forward. And coupled with that, you can't say congratulations to them unless you say thank you to this wonderful staff who has put in countless hours and continue to make us look good, because they're the ones that make us really look good.
Well, we actually agree with Anthony on one thing, and that is that the people on the new local planning and zoning board are to be congratulated for their new positions. So congratulations. On another note, though, staff, you really got to work on how to run a meeting and how to use Robert's Rules of Order, because while you do have a chairman, you still don't have a vice chair, and it actually wasn't run according to proper procedure, but we'll call it a learning curve for those that were in charge. Good job, though, to all of you on the board. We're keeping an eye on you, and I hope you do the right thing by Indiantown. Let's keep going.
Village Attorney, number 4, please.
Thank you, Mayor. A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Indiantown, Florida, extending its state of local emergency due to the continued threat of COVID-19, providing the village with powers, including but not limited to those pursuant to Florida Statutes, Chapter 252, granting the village manager certain powers, providing for penalties for violations, providing for conflicts, severability, and for an effective date, a termination date, and procedures for extensions.
We're asking for a 60-day continuance on our emergency, state of emergency, local emergency.
So move for approval, Councilman Dowling.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any
Vice Mayor Clark.
Any discussion by the council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Councilwoman Susan Gibbs Thomas.
What is the necessity for us to continue this month after month after month? Can you please
Yes, go ahead.
expound on that?
Yeah.
So, the primary reason at this point is precautionary. Just had this exact same discussion in Okeechobee County this morning, actually. The concern is, historically, when we've dealt with emergency management situations, that's primarily with FEMA, all right? A lot of our money has been CARES Act money coming through the Treasury Department, but in any event, FEMA is going to be involved going forward with regard to a lot of this. The concern at this point is primarily we keep it in effect for any period of time we may be spending money, we would be seeking emergency reimbursement for, okay? And in addition to that, having this resolution in place authorizes the village to act to cope with the emergency, not generally, but to cope with the COVID-19 emergency, to not have to check every box of its procurement policies or anything like that if we had to get something quickly. The next potential time we might have to do this, we of course had to do this early on in the pandemic. Next potential time may be with the vaccine. There may be times we may need to spend some money or something like this and so on. So really, this is just precautionary at this point, more than anything. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't cost us anything to do it. And it's, at the very least, another box we can check if FEMA 3, 4, 5 years from now is looking for reasons to deny money. That's primarily what this is really about at this point.
Okay, so you heard it. First, you heard Anthony tell everybody it's their mandate that's making everybody better and keeping you from getting sick because they're mandating you wearing a mask. Hooey, basically hooey. But listen to the village attorney. He's telling you the truth. He says, "Look, this is a money issue. This is so that we can keep our purse strings with FEMA and the federal government open, the United States Treasury, like it's some blasted candy store that you walk up to the window, stick out your hand, and say, 'Sign me a check.' Those are your tax dollars and mine. Keep your hands off of them. Open the village, and let's get back on with things." Because the way I see it, with that mandate that you're putting out, people are staying home during these meetings. You've scared them, just like a couple of people on the village council who, by the way, who else is in the room with these people while this meeting is going on? I've been told that certain council people actually have people in there coaching them and telling them how to vote. We've actually seen their face show up on the screen. So bring yourselves back into the public, people, where you can be seen by the rest of us, and do what you're supposed to do. Act like a leader, not like some puppet on a string.
Yes, thank you so much. In this, from the first reading to the second reading, has there been a change in I noticed that there was in this renaming of a federal holiday. Is that still in there?
Yeah, it's still in there. Nothing was changed from the last meeting.
Okay, so who recommended that change?
I did.
You did. It didn't come from a council member or
No.
the community or.
No, it's just my recommendation.
Okay. Recommending changing a federal holiday.
Recommending that we change Columbus Day. And
Yes.
just name one called Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay. And that came from where? Because the federal government hasn't changed it. State hasn't changed it. I
Yeah.
mean, where did
Yeah.
that come from? The council hasn't asked for that change, nor has the community.
Well, I'm open to whatever the council wants to do. It's just my recommendation. I mean, if you
Okay,
want
and I appreciate that, but I don't think changing the name of a federal holiday falls underneath personnel regulations. I mean, that's not, that doesn't have anything to do with reporting requirements, having an employee on duty, leave, dress codes, EAP. So I'm not in favor of that, because I'm not too sure where that came from. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's an overreach of authority there to change something that is a federal holiday, state holiday. So I would like to see that changed.
Yeah, now we can start to get into the heat of the matter here. And again, Howard Brown just making arbitrary decisions on his own to back up his own black supremacist view of the way things should be. Indigenous Peoples Day? It's Columbus Day. Remember that, folks. Columbus Day.
Vice Mayor Clark.
I don't think he can change it. I think entities can choose which days that they want to use, if I'm not mistaken. You could correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brown. You can't change something that's already is. I think there's already an indigenous people. Is there or not?
No, there's
You're just
there-
choosing not to one of your days as Columbus days, and you're choosing to use. I don't think he can't change something by the federal government, Councilman Gil Thomas. But each entity or organization can choose which holidays that they want to use. I believe that's what this is.
So what I'm hearing is that we're leaving Columbus Day as Columbus Day, and we're choosing to also say that it is Indigenous Peoples Day?
I think I'm hoping maybe we listen to two different paradigms. I said that like Florida community, they work on, we don't work on Veterans Day, but they do. You follow me? I think it's choosing which holiday that the village wants to use.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
And I appreciate that, but I think that what I saw was there was a strike through that at Columbus Day, and they're choosing to take that day off no matter what it's called. But what I saw was there was a strike through, and it's no longer going to be called Columbus Day, that we are choosing to call it Indigenous Peoples Day. It'll be the same day off, we're just calling it something else. Am I correct in that?
Can I just clarify, because I did share on my social media Indigenous People Day. Actually, it's something that came up, didn't come up recently. It just started being celebrated on Columbus Day. So actually, if you go on my Mac computer, I'm on October 2021, and it has labeled Columbus Day, and underneath it, it has Indigenous Peoples Day. And Mac computers are set where you get all the federal holidays. So it's being also considered as Indigenous People Day. And what we can do to solve the solution is celebrate both of them. But right now, Indigenous People Day is a celebration that's done at that same day.
Okay.
So it's not nothing.
Oh, so it's something that we can choose.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem having it as both. What I saw was one was struck through. Like, we're not doing that one anymore, but we're choosing to do this one. Did not realize that. I don't have an issue with having them both indicated.
Councilman Dowling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't even know where to begin. Indigenous Day has been celebrated in this country, not as a federal holiday, but it has been celebrated for over 20 years. First thing. Second thing is a little bit of history about Columbus. He never came to America. And I think as we are moving forward as not only a country, but as a community, we need to set the history straight. He didn't even discover America. Second thing is, you can't discover something if people are already there. And wouldn't it be fitting to celebrate Indigenous Day, considering that the name of this community is the Village of Indiantown? Because if you find out the history of the Village of Indiantown, before it was called Annie, those folks were moved off of their land here. So I think this would be a great opportunity for us to restore the proper history, the accurate history, by naming it Indigenous Day. If y'all want to celebrate Columbus Day, I think you can, but I think it should be a personal decision to celebrate that day. But I plan on celebrating Indigenous Day, and I hope that the rest of this council will celebrate Indigenous Day moving forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. And just to piggyback on Councilman Dowling's comment in regards of that, this year I actually saw it much more on social media. I literally was able to read about it. It's been celebrated. It just hasn't been really well known. And yes, but this year, because of everything going around in the United States in regards of color, it's something that's being recognized federally now because of everything going on. So I think that being from a community here in Indiantown, it's something that we should celebrate because I can tell you, I have Mayan blood. So I will always tell people this. I am Guatemalan American. I'm proud to be it. And why? And that's why I went on vacation and was able to be and feel the culture, the people, because that's where my roots come from. And I will never be ashamed of it. And I think that if we can include this as our federal holiday, so be it. There's nothing wrong with celebrating it. What we can do to resolve this solution is just make it Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day to make everyone happy. So is there any further discussion by the council? Any?
if I may.
Yes.
I appreciate that, and I agree. You know, if that's the way that is, I don't think that we should negate a federal holiday, but adding to and making sure that it's recognized as far as Indigenous People Day, that's great. I don't have a problem. I like the slash and celebrating both.
So whoever has that motion to approve this.
I move that we follow staff recommendation, get rid of Columbus Day, and put Indigenous People Day.
Okay. So we'll go through this. Any public comment? Roll call, please.
Aye.
Nay.
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 Yes. It failed. So do we have another motion?
I would like to make a motion that we have both indicated on that date.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And just to clarify that motion, it's the adoption of the ordinance with what she stated.
With the amendment to the Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. Any further discussion by the council?
Yeah,
Any-
if I could, Madam Mayor, I think I think we're making a big mistake, and as we move forward, we're gonna find ourselves behind the 8 ball, and I hope that we understand what we're doing tonight. Thank you.
Any public comment? Roll call, please.
Nay.
Aye.
Yes.
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 I know today's review is taking a little longer than normal, but I'd like to follow up on this idea about Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day and kind of put it out there as to why it matters. If you look to Los Angeles and Austin, Texas, they've now joined the list of liberal-run cities that have eradicated Columbus Day from their calendars. They've replaced it with Indigenous Peoples Day. In LA, the desire to diss the European discoverer was so strong that they rejected a compromise proposal to keep Columbus Day and add Indigenous Peoples Day elsewhere. Quote, "We need to dismantle state-sponsored celebration of genocide of indigenous peoples," said Chris Castro of LA Native American Indian Commission. "To make us celebrate on any other day would be further injustice." Most Americans don't agree, though. A new Marist poll finds the majority of Americans admire Columbus and support Columbus Day. They reject the idea that it's a holiday about slaughter and enslavement. However, if we really want to commemorate, horrifying, unspeakable violence and oppression in Americas, I've got the perfect holiday for you. It's called Indigenous Peoples Day. Long before the white European knew a North American continent existed, Anthony, Indians of the Northern Plains were massacring entire villages, said Frank Franklin Feldman in the Book of Cannibalism, Headhunting, and Human Sacrifice in North America, A History Forgotten. Nice title. And not just killed, quote, but mutilated. Hands and feet were cut off. Each body's head was scalped. The remains were left scattered around the village, which was burned. So when thinking of pre-Columbian America, forget what you've seen in the Disney movies. Think slavery, cannibalism, and mass human sacrifice. From the Aztecs, Mayans, to the Iroquois, that was life amongst the indigenous people before Columbus arrived. For all the talk from the angry and indigenous about European slavery, it turns out that the pre-Columbian America was virtually one huge slave camp. According to slavery and Native Americans born in British North America and the United States between 1616 and 1865 by Tony Siebert, most Native American tribal groups practiced some form of slavery before the European introduction of African slavery in North America. Enslaved warriors sometimes endured mutilation or torture that could end in death as part of a grief ritual for relatives slain in battle. Some Indians cut off one foot of their captives to keep them from running away. Things changed when the Europeans arrived, however. Indians found that British settlers eagerly purchased or captured Indians to use as forced labor. More and more Indians began selling war captives to whites. That's right, Pocahontas and her pals were slave traders. If you were an Indian lucky enough to be sold to a European slave master that turned out to be a good thing, relatively speaking, at least you didn't end up in a scene from the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Ritual human sacrifice was widespread in the Americas. The Incas, for example, practiced ritual human sacrifice to appease their gods, either executing captive warriors or their own specially raised, perfectly formed children. According to Kim McQuire, author of The Last Days of the Incas. The Aztecs, on the other hand, were more into the volume approach of ritual human slaughter. At the reconsecration of the Great Pyramid in 1478, the Aztecs performed a mass human sacrifice of an estimated 80,000 enslaved captives in 4 days. According to an eyewitness account of indigenous people at work in this case, the Iroquois in 1642, as observed by the Reverend Father Bartholomew Viments, the Jesuit Relations, captives had their fingers cut off, were forced to set each other on fire, had their skin stripped off, and in one captured warrior's case, the torture continued throughout the night, building to a fervor, finally ending at sunrise by cutting his scalp open, forcing sand into the wound, and dragging his mutilated body around the camp. When they'd finished, the Iroquois carved him up and ate. That's right, 8 parts of his body. Shocked? Don't be. Cannibalism was also fairly common in the New World before and after Columbus arrived. According to numerous sources, the name Mohawk comes from the Algonquin from flesh eaters. Anthropologist Marvin Harris, author of Cannibals and Kings, reports that the Aztecs viewed their prisoners as marching meat. The native peoples also had an obsession with heads. Scalping was a common practice amongst many tribes, while some, like the Jarabo and the Andes, were feared for their head hunting, shrinking their victims' heads to the size of an orange. Even sports involved severed heads. If you were lucky enough to survive a game widely popular by Mesoamerican ball, losers were often dispatched to paradise. Your trophy could include an actual human head. Slavery, torture, cannibalism. Tell me why we're celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day again, and we're getting rid of Columbus Day to protest what? The fact that one group of slavery-practicing, violent people conquered another group of violent, bloodthirsty slavers? That's a summary of the history of the Americas before Columbus arrived. This has always been the fatal flaw of the left's politics of race guilt. Name the race that's not guilty. Racism, violence, and conquest are part of the human condition, not the European one. There is, however, one key difference between the European conquistadors and the Incas, Aztecs, Iroquois, Mayans who conquered the Americas before them. In addition to violence and greed, the Europeans also brought literacy, liberalism, and the scientific method, all of which would transform America into the greatest champion of human freedom the world has ever known. Do the anti-Columbus activists who claim Europe's conquest of America is a sin really want to live back in a world where it never happened? Where America is an illiterate, technological backwater of tribal violence and ritual human sacrifice? Of course not. The only reason their ideological idiocy has free reign today is because Europeans showed up in 1492. Happy Columbus Day, everybody.